There are two things that I want to talk about. One thing that Jesus says is, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things. So, Jesus outright saying, people who believe in him will do greater things than him. The second is, the kingdom of heaven is within you, not outside in the sky or some other realm. It is inside you, within you. For those two things, the thing that comes to mind when I read those two things that Jesus says, that Yeshua says, is people who have a relationship with God, people who have a relationship with the divine. And the only thing I can think of to really get in touch with God within, the kingdom of heaven within you, is to have conversations with yourself. Most people think their ego and their thoughts are just a part of them. But from what I've practiced using active imagination that Carl Jung teaches, and also writing out dialogue, conversations, pen on paper, I will ask a question and listen for what I hear in my mind as a response, and I write it down, and I have a dialogue with the voice within. There are probably more than one voice. There's probably not just God's voice in there, of your conscience. People often call it your conscience. I would equate that to God's voice. But there's also your shadow, berating you about your insecurities and how unworthy you are. There's probably your anima or animus in there, which is your soul. Your soul has a voice. And from my experience, after having done this, just like when you speak, you can also speak in your head, just like you're speaking out loud, but you can speak in your head. And that's different from the thoughts that appear and bubble up and come to you. Those are different. But the voice that you speak consciously, as if you're pronouncing it in your head, from my experience, that is the voice of my anima. That is the voice of my soul. And the soul is just speaking for me on the inside. If you're a woman, then it's your animus. The one who replies back will either be God, which Jung calls the self with a capital S. So the self, capital S, God. Or it could be your shadow, which people often call the devil or Satan. But really it's all the repressed parts, the dark parts of yourself that you repress. Or it could be some other lowercase God, lowercase g God. Because there is not just God and the devil and your soul. There are other figures and other gods. Even in the Bible it says there are a council of gods. There's more than just one deity. Even if the Bible proclaims Yahweh as the one above all. When I was trying to use active imagination to have conversation with myself, which ended up, I thought it was my anima at the time. It turns out it was God disguised as my anima all along, until God revealed himself, herself, to me on the night of March 3rd. And then, like a month later in April, that's when my anima introduced herself. And I was like, oh, I thought I've been talking to my anima all along, but it turns out that was God the whole time. And my anima only came to separate herself from God, my soul, separate herself from God, once my relationship and dialogue with God has stabilized. If this sounds all too out there, you'll probably understand a bit more of what I'm talking about if you read the Red Book by Carl Jung, who talks about how he started going into his unconscious depths and seeing visions and talking with these figures, and what he learned from all that. So that'll be probably in the same realm of what I'm saying here in this video, but the key I want to stress is to have a conversation with yourself, or to rather to have a conversation with these figures whose voices are disguised as your thoughts, because you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. So then your thoughts, by definition, are an other. It's not you, then it's an other. So have conversations with yourself. If it's hard and to hear the voice when you're saying it out loud, whatever you speak with your voice out loud, that is you. Everything else is somebody else speaking in your thoughts as your thoughts. So if you ask a question or say something out loud, wait to hear back what you hear internally. And if that's hard to do because the voice starts quieting down and not speaking that much, then use pen on paper and write me, what you would say, what you say, and then, I don't know, T for thoughts if you don't have a name yet, or A for anima or animus, and or S for shadow. But if you haven't distinguished it, just write T for thoughts and then write down what your thoughts say in return, and have a dialogue, a conversation, a back and forth with your thoughts. You'll be surprised that it's actually a dialogue and it's not a monologue. I believe that is the first step to the journey of getting in touch with the numinous within, the divine within, God within. It's the first step, I think, of, I don't know if this is true what Carl Jung says, but I believe it's talking with your thoughts is the first step to individuation, which just means becoming whole and not divided, which Carl Jung said that individuation is the purpose of life. That's what he believed the purpose of life was. And if you go through this process of talking with your thoughts, it'll be a long journey. It took me years and years, well, over a decade easily, since I started hearing and paying attention to my thoughts, and then eventually 10 years later talking to my thoughts, and then some years of that before I finally started having proper dialogue, not just snippets of conversation here and there, one or two words. So speak with your thoughts, or write out your conversation with your thoughts. Eventually, maybe years or decades, or even sooner if you're naturally inclined, you will eventually have a conversation with your shadow and have a conversation with God. And it'll open up the floodgates for you. So you might at one point think you're going psychotic and crazy, but if your ego is strong enough, you will be able to handle the floodgates opening and the conversation with your shadow and the divine, which is all just parts of a whole. And people say God is good, but Carl Jung says that God is whole, encompassing everything, the good and the bad. And in my experience, that's been the case as well. So have a conversation with your thoughts, speak out loud, or write it down, pen on paper. Begin that journey. That's what I wanted to share today.